As Europe faces volatility and uncertainty, strong bilateral relationships are critical. That's why the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, is here in Warsaw to meet with his Polish counterpart, Andrzej Duda. And President Stubb joins me now. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Let's start with the relationship between Poland and the Nordic region. How important is it for Poland to have strong, united bonds with countries like Finland right now?
Important, but it's a two-way street. I think Finland and Poland actually are very similar. We have 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia. We have a big military. We're full members of the European Union and of NATO. So in that sense, I think we go hand in hand or hip to hip, as they say, with Poland. And I think that's a really good thing in this geopolitical situation.
Looking at the war in Ukraine, what does the path to peace tangibly look like?
It's long, and actually it goes in many phases. The first phase is that we have to provide as much military equipment and finance to Ukraine as possible so that it can win this war and therefore also win this peace. But if you look at the path to peace, I would argue that probably Zelensky will need four things. The first thing he will need is territory. Second thing he'll need is security guarantees. Third thing he'll need is justice, so military war criminals indicted. And then fourth, he'll need reconstruction. But we're not there yet, but at least we're talking about peace. And if you don't talk about peace, you cannot achieve it.
Is there more that Europe can be doing to get to that peace solution?
Well, I mean, there's always a sense that we are one step behind. So in that sense, yes, we can do more. I guess it does start from finance, but there we are giving as much as we can. Then it goes to military equipment, and after that it goes to ammunition. We should certainly not have any restrictions on what Ukraine can do. I mean, some of our allies still limit the usage of weapons into Russian territory, and I don't think that's smart at all. Finland has no limits of what Ukraine can do as long as it does it for self-defense and within the framework of international relations.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz this week has suggested Ukraine and Russia get to the same negotiating table. Do you feel like Vladimir Putin will stop? Is peace possible with him?
It's difficult. I think he has to be forced to peace, and he has to lose this peace. I guess peace and peace negotiations are always a question of timing, when, where and how. And Zelensky has talked about peace over the 2 years. He has a 10-point plan. We discussed 3 of those points in Switzerland this summer. And as a peace mediator, I fully realize that at some stage you need to have 2 parties around the table. But first we need to convince, especially the global south, that Russia needs to come in. And that's why I have kept on pushing China, saying that China is in such a driver's seat right now, it needs to basically be in touch with the Russians and say, time to start the negotiations. But I stress, it has to be a just peace from the perspective of Ukraine.
Talk me through that relationship with China. In May, you met with Xi Jinping, a member of the political bureau of the Communist Party of China. China, like you say, is a superpower that could have much influence on the war in Ukraine. Did you discuss the war with him, and what did you say?
We did, and I keep on saying it, both privately and publicly. 1 phone call. I know there's a little bit of exaggeration there, but nevertheless, from Xi Jinping to Vladimir Putin saying that it is time to negotiate, I think that would do it. Then you have to discuss on what terms. And here it's very important for the global south to understand that this sets a precedent. If the peace is not just, then similar situations can happen around the world. And I think it would be in the interest of China to help to end this war as well. And I do think that in the beginning of the war, China was sitting on the fence, but now it is providing Russia with too much help, especially finance or dual goods. So if at one stage I have a chance to discuss with President Xi Jinping again, I will make it clear that it is time to act.
The readout from that meeting from China notes that you spoke highly of, and I quote, China's contributions to promoting global peace, stability and prosperity. China has widely been reported to be supplying arms equipment to Russia. How can China contribute to global peace as it currently stands?
This is the thing. I mean, if you talk about Confucius, if you talk about harmony, if you talk about peace and peaceful coexistence, you have to put your money where your mouth is. So it's not enough just to talk, and that's why we need a little bit more action from from China. We should also see this probably in the context of a bigger strategic big power sort of tension between the United States and China. So if the two of them can start talking in the direction of achieving peace, I think then we're doing well. But remember that middle powers will have a big say in this. Brazil, Saudi Arabia, India. I just met with the Emir of Qatar, could be a possible power broker here. So there's a lot at stake, and we need to get the Chinese involved.
So do you highly regard China's contributions to promoting global peace, stability, prosperity, or is it the potential to do those things?
Probably the potential. You were referring to a Chinese readout
Correct.
of the meeting, not to my readout.
So you would dispute that readout just a little bit?
Well, put it this way, China has a tendency to explain it in their own way, and they have all the right to do that. But I just think the fact that we're talking about peace in and of itself is important. A lot is at stake here. It's very important that Russia pays a high price for this peace at the end of the day.
So to be very clear, you believe China has the potential to play a really significant role in global peace?
I really do. And that's why I think we need to also put pressure on China to do this. Because this is a peace which cannot be forged only coming from the West. We have to remember that when we had the peace summit that Zelensky organized in Switzerland, we had about 60 heads of state and government, 80 countries represented. And we have about 200 countries in the world. This means that a lot of countries are not on the peace path yet. The more pressure we put on that, the better. Having said that, I do think that peace has to come on Ukrainian terms.
You've previously admitted to getting it wrong on Russia, believing it could become a European democracy. Are we at risk of making the same mistake with China?
No, I mean, I don't think anyone is expecting China to become a European democracy, if that's what you're asking.
But as a democracy that is able to...
Yeah, I think we're very far away from that, to be honest. And then you have to come to the question of, okay, how do you contain big power competition? For me, the best place to do that is actually international institutions like the UN. And therefore, I call upon the UN to reform, and I will do that at the end of September at the General Assembly of the United Nations in New York as well. So the starting point is the containment between the United States and China, and then we'll see how things pan out after that. But I have no illusions China is not going to become a liberal democracy anytime soon.
Would you really like to have a sit down with President Xi Jinping and say these things to his face?
Yeah, I met him a couple of times in my previous life as foreign minister, and he was vice president at the time. I believe in values-based realism, which basically means that you stick to your own values. So in my case, human rights, fundamental rights, freedom, democracy, rule of law, international rules, and international institutions. But realism says that you also have to be able to have conversations with people who don't think like you. Otherwise, you cannot solve the big global goods or challenges like climate change, like demography or technology. So it's a question of what kind of an approach you take. Would I like to talk with President Xi Jinping about the global order, about democracy, about the way forward? Yes.
Can I come back to that admission that with Russia, you got it wrong? Was Poland right to be wary of Russia? And did you and perhaps the West not take those concerns seriously enough?
Well, perhaps in my own country, I was considered to be a bit of a Russia hawk. So everything is relative. But I do say that the Baltic states and Poland got it right. They always warned us about Russia. I was involved in mediating peace in Georgia in 2008. I gave my first warnings at an ambassadorial speech, which I called 080808, saying that power politics was back at the borders of Europe and we should be wary of Russia because they were changing the face of international relations in the post-Cold War era. So to answer your question directly, was Poland right? Yes.
Finland has relatively high debt, mainly due to defence spending. Do you support Poland's efforts to finance the defence of the eastern flank with EU money?
I'm very wary of my constitutional rights. So I lead our foreign policy and I am the commander-in-chief. I don't deal with money, but I think it is quite safe to say that Poland's efforts to increase its defense expenditure, which already now are between 4 to 5% of GDP, is good. Finland is at about 2.3, 2.4. I think that's good. And what we will see in the foreseeable future is most of the allies, now 23, already going over the 2% mark. It is just a reality. It's a fact of life right now that we have to do more defense expenditure in order to have a strong deterrence against Russia.
Immigration, also a hot button political issue in Europe. How should the region deal with undocumented and irregular immigration?
Well, you have two sets here. One, if we link it to Russia and the instrumentalization of migrants, we need to understand that it is not traditional asylum seekers. The second thing then overall is that if we look at the demographic curve of the world, if we look at the demographics in Europe, it is a fact that we need more immigrants in Europe. And we need to find a system whereby work-based immigrants are welcome and we can get it to work. Other than that, I leave the questions of non-papered immigrants to our government and to European governments to deal with.
Now, I'd just like to end in 2016, you told Politico, and I quote again, "My fear is that now we have this wave of whatever you want to call it, nativist, extreme left, extreme right, whatever, populism." Is that what we're seeing in 2024?
I think we have definitely moved the pendulum from, say, a liberal internationalist more to a conservative nationalist type of approach. And you find it actually both left and right, as we can now see, for instance, with the support or non-support for Ukraine in German regional elections. The pendulum of democracy does funny things at times. It moves in all kinds of different directions. And I think the root cause of it is that us who believe in a more international global world haven't been able to explain the benefits of what globalization is. And it's very easy with today's information and technology to tap into the fears of people, whether it's about their jobs, whether it's about their identity. So I think we do need to do a change in terminology and in political discourse. Otherwise, we lose this battle.
President Stubb, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's our exclusive interview with the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb. Do stay with us here on TVP World. I'm Aaron Dahmen. Thanks for watching.